You ready to do this, Steve?
Let's do it, Spence. Punch it, Chewie.
Welcome, super friends, to the Fortress of Nerditude podcast, a safe place to talk about all things in nerd and pop culture. I'm Spencer Stapleton, and my co-pilot, as always, is Steve Madura.
Greetings, Earthlings.
We're two best friends that, despite being fathers and husbands, we just refuse to grow up. Thank you for joining us. This is episode number 45, or as we say, alternate Michael Jordan. We release every Thursday morning on iTunes, Google Music, and Stitcher. We are also available wherever you can find podcasts, batteries not included.
Do you ever remember that movie, Batteries Not Included? It was done by Steven Spielberg way back in the day.
Yeah, I don't remember liking it at all.
No, it was kind of a crappy movie.
I remember that I didn't see it live. I think I saw it on a late night TV, and I remember seeing ads for it on WGN, and I begged my mom and dad to let me stay up and watch it. Because it was on late, 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, sure. And so I stayed up, and I think I watched 15 minutes of it, and I fell asleep.
And that was the first time in your young youth you've I regret watching this movie and wasting this 2 hours of my life I'll never get back.
Right. I've seen a lot of bad movies, a lot of movies that I would say I regret time, but that's not the worst. But it's not the best either.
No, very good. Well, hey, so what's up, man? We haven't talked in 7 to 10 days.
Right.
I give a range, a window.
I miss talking to you, Steve. It's been forever.
I know.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
So I just flew in. My arms are a little tired. From Pennsylvania. Have you been to Pennsylvania?
My mom lives there, so yes, I have been to Pennsylvania. Now, I didn't get any Hershey chocolate, though, when I went there, so I feel like I missed out on the full experience.
You know, if you don't get the Hershey chocolate, a Philly cheesesteak, and somebody to give you the finger, that's pretty much, you miss out on the Pennsylvania experience. And I got all three.
I was waiting for you, or if you didn't get, a finger by an Amish Dutchman or something like that.
Brotherly love my foot. Yeah, so I was
now,
out there.
Wait, hold on a second. Before we totally besmirch the city of Philadelphia.
Besmirch? Is that even a word?
It is. Look it up. And the state of Pennsylvania. Hey, I've got a good friend that lived there for a long time. Ed Placentia, who lived there, who now's back in Indiana, where he's originally from. He lived there, the good people. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of good people. It's just you had a less than pleasant experience, and in a humorous way, you are expressing that.
Besmirch, a verb, to damage the reputation of someone or something in the opinions of others.
Told you I know stuff, man.
Afro circus. Or literally, to make something dirty or discolored. We are not saying anything about the... go there.
Just stop. You were okay with the first one. Now you're getting weird.
Okay. Wait, anyway, so
Pennsylvania.
So I was in Pennsylvania today. Flew into Wilkes-Barre and headed up to Scranton because we've got a potential client up there. And
did you run into Michael Scott?
Of course, you would ask. Yes. So we went to the Hilton downtown Scranton, which is a blip on the map of nowhere. I mean, it's a very small town, and definitely shows its age. You can tell that it's a town that once was and is no longer. But it's funny because as we rounded the corner, she's like, down your hall to the elevators, take it up to the 4th floor or whatever. So we round the corner and there is a life-size, group of the cast of The Office, pointing to the elevator. And they're all, I'm like, whoa, oh, hi, whoa, this was unexpected. But you can tell that it's it's from the early episodes, and the cardboard cutouts are kind of weathered and whatnot. And, the finger of Dwight Schrute is bent because people have walked by it so many times. It's all broken off. I'm like, that's a feeble attempt at some tourism ploy to capitalize on a show that was fictionally based here.
Hey man, we grew up in a city that celebrated pumpkins once a year, so I'm saying I'm not gonna knock them for that.
I mean, gourds are a little bit more timeless, I believe. Anyway, so I was out there. It is beautiful, though. We drove about an hour north of Wilkes-Barre into the kind of the upper regions of Pennsylvania, and just not even rolling hills. I mean, they're hills. And the leaves are just starting to turn colors, and it was right on the banks of the Susquehanna River, which, if you know Indian, it means Susquehanna. So,
right, very, very true.
Besmirch my foot. But anyway, it was really neat. I actually got to visit a few church historical sites while I was out there, which was kind of cool. And unbeknownst to me, it was like 5 minutes from this property that we were looking at. But anyway, so just flew in from that, and had a nice time with a colleague of mine, Ed Beck, and we ate more food than was humanly probably agreeable, and expense report probably a little heavy, we'll say, for that.
Yes.
But a good time was had by all. Had a good week, and I'm just happy to be back, man. Happy to get to it, man. Get to Rebel Intelligence. Get on with things, man. I want to get to it.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you're back.
Yeah. How was your week?
Well, I've got a story to tell you, and I'm going to start off with this. Da 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 da.
Hello.
So,
for those viewing audience at home.
Yeah, what you can't see is I'm holding up to Steven, showing him a brand new Super Nintendo Entertainment System's SNES Mini Classic Edition. It is the white whale of probably Christmas gifts for this year. Now,
wow.
In typical fashion, I've talked about how I missed out on the NES Mini Classic. I tried to get it, but everywhere I went, they were sold out, and we talked about how they're going to release more. So here's the thing. This thing was released on Friday, and I've been determined to get one. I know they keep saying they're going to make more, and I know I should want to believe that, but I don't want to risk it. So I go and I call up my local Walmart, and I say, it's 24 hours, and I say, hey, are you going to be getting these in on Friday? And they said, yes. I said, great. You guys are 24 hours. Is this going to be available at midnight? And he says, yes. I was like, yes, okay, great. I will be there. So my plan was to show up at my Walmart like around 6 p.m. Make sure I was nice and early so I guaranteed to get myself one. Well, the problem was this. I had forgotten that my wife had planned an event with some women in the church that evening from 6 to 8. I was 6 to 9. Sorry, 6 to 9. And so I got home and I was like, yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to go over to Walmart. She's like, well, I've got my thing from 6 to 9 and I kind of been planning on this for a little while. She doesn't always get a chance to go to these things, and she's kind of making some new friends and, meeting some new people. And so she really wanted to go because some of the other ladies that she's been spending some time with are going to be there. So, of course, trying to be a good husband and a good father and, trying to quell the inner beast inside of me that raged at the idea of letting her go and just going myself, saying, hey, this is more important, which it's not. I get it. This is a toy. I'm trying to relive my childhood, first world problems. Right. I know. I understand this. I know.
Friends? I need video games.
Yeah. Who needs friends when you've got video games? so I said, sure, honey. You go to your thing. When you get home at 9 o'clock, not a problem. So she shows back up.
I'll be waiting with the car running.
Pretty much. Shoes were on. I'm like, come on. Tick tock, 9:05. You're killing me. No. So I had to go over also and pick up something from my brother's house, and I was going to send him some money on PayPal, and so he was just going to give me the cash for it. So I arrive at like 9:45 at the Walmart, and I'm number 26 in line. So I'm thinking, okay, not bad. I mean, still there's a lot of people. I was talking to the guy right next to me, and he said, yeah, I'm 25, and I showed up at 8:30. So between 8:30 and 9:45, no one showed up.
Okay, that's good.
And about 10 minutes later, this lady about our age, this woman my age, shows up, And then about 10 minutes later, another guy shows up, and then it's pretty much like dead until about 11:15, and then all of a sudden, like 20 more people showed up behind us. Like people were showing up like right at midnight.
Idiots.
All of a sudden, we start talking, and they're like, "We think we only have 25."
Are you kidding me?
At this Walmart. And I'm like, okay. I was like, well, let us know. And like 10 minutes before they're going to release it, they're like, yep, we only have 25. And so I'm 26. Right?
Oh my gosh.
If I would have showed up at 6 p.m., I would have been like third in line. So I'm 26th in line out of 25 people. And I'm thinking,
quell the beast.
I'm like, okay,
quell the beast.
okay, we can do this. I said, it's like, so he's like, you guys can just go if you want. I was like, you know what? I'm going to wait. And so I'm thinking, because they had this like little thing that like, if you get out of line and you're out of line for more than 10 minutes, you lose your spot and everyone moves up a number. So like one guy got to like 8.5 minutes. I'm like, come on. But he managed to get back in time, which I know I shouldn't be like rooting against people, but I was, and I was hoping someone was going to have a bad bout of IBS and was going to force them past the 10-minute time mark. So now
some like reality game show.
Right. So now it's 10 minutes before, and I was like, I'm sticking it out. I've waited here for like, a little over 2 hours. I'm going to hope that maybe someone's credit card gets declined.
Oh my gosh.
So I get up there, 25 people go before me. I get to be next in line. They're like, sorry, we're out. I was like, dang. So I came home, and it's like now almost 1 a.m, Thursday evening going into Friday. I got to work the next morning. But we've been talking to people in line. They're like, yeah, Target is opening early at 8 a.m. and you can go get in line at like 7 a.m. and they're giving tickets away. I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. And then my Twitter started beeping at me. I was almost asleep. It's about 1 a.m. And it said, hey, if you have the Target Cartwheel app, apparently you can order it through Target's little app and you can pick it up locally. They won't deliver it, but you can pick it up locally. So I got on and I got one reserved at a Target that's about 45 minutes, almost an hour away from me.
But you've been hurt before with it. You reserved and it said, your order can't be processed.
Yes,
I mean, this is what happened the whole...
But this said, hey, this has been reserved. We got it for you. There's one for you there tomorrow. Sweet. So I pay the money, About 3 a.m., my phone starts beeping and I get an email that says, hey, we're sorry to tell you, but this is no longer in stock at that Walmart. Basically, the Target, yeah, not in stock at the Target. You can either click this button here to say, hey, we'll send you one when they become available, or you can do nothing and we'll refund your money in 2 days. I was like, I'll just refund my money because I don't know if they're going to come in stock and if they'll ship it to me. So I get up in the morning early, about 6:30, after being out till 1 and then waking up at 3. And I get up and I get out the door by about 7:15 and I get over to Target and I'm number 40 in line. But this time I'm standing outside in the cold. And they had 60 of them. So
60?
They had 60 of them. So I walked into Target, I plunked my cash down, and I got my SNES Mini Classic first thing Friday morning from Target. And I was like, well, great. Like, I've got this other one I still ordered through Target. Maybe I'll respond to that, and then I'll give it away. And then all of a sudden, like, hey, since this was canceled, we're going to send you a $50 gift certificate because this is our bad, and we're going to refund your money. So,
dude,
I ended up getting it through Target in store, and I got a $50 gift certificate from Target.
That's awesome. Well, here's the question though: why would Walmart only have 26 and Target have 80?
So it wasn't
60,
just.
whatever.
It was weird because like our Target had 25. There was a Target over about 10 miles, like 10 minutes away, that had 50 of them. Another Target had like 100 or like 80 of them or something. So basically, they tried to approximate due to population and what's around there, like how many they think they would need based on some algorithm. And
due to the nerd population, they're like, there are a lot of pen protectors that have been sold in this general area.
They'll want many.
Oh, that's awesome.
So anyway, it was a bit of a struggle, but it was a get, and I got it. And then, man, the rest of the weekend was good. Family's doing good. We had dinner with our neighbors that live across the street. He's the bishop of our local congregation. They invited us to come over. It was kind of nice to get to spend a little bit of time with them. We haven't really done that yet, but our boys are the same age as their boys, so they like to play. And, of course, like one boy hit another boy, and it's like all parents are intervening, all hands on deck, trying to figure out who hit who and why, and then, how this child will be, talked to or punished or whatever. And I was like, I'm sure my son started it. I'm like, I know he's the one crying right now, and he's the one that got punched in the stomach, but I promise, I know this kid. He started it. I'm like, let's punish him. I know it's to be true.
And if not, it'll be punishment for something he'll do later.
Right, exactly. But no, man, family's doing good. We're having a good time, a good week. Personally, our family's doing real well, and work's going good. A little stressful. We got a lot going on, but I mean, I'm here. Yeah. I'm happy to be here as always.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, without further ado, let's get to some Rebel Intelligence. What do you say?
I think it would besmirch the podcast not to get to Rebel Intelligence.
How descriptive of you.
All right, let's get to it. I always have to let you know, many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Rest in peace, you Bothans. So we wanted to start Rebel Intelligence on an unfortunate, somber note. This past weekend there was what is being called, the worst shooting incident in U.S. history in Las Vegas. There are, at least at this count, at this hour, there are at least 58 people that were killed, more than 500 people that were.
It's actually 59 now.
What the freak? I have 58 CNN.
No.
The people were at a country music festival at the Las Vegas Strip, and the shooter fired from a 32nd floor at the Mandalay Bay Hotel. We don't want to spend too much time on this because, Spencer and I talked about this prior to the podcast, and obviously, the intent of this podcast is to just focus on kind of the good, and we try to keep it light, but at the same time, couldn't go without, paying our respects to those that have been affected by this, and there are many, and it is always a very, very just heartbreaking thing when something so unneeded happens like this. And so we just wanted to take a moment and our thoughts and prayers sincerely and genuinely go out to everyone that's been affected, and just a tragic event that's happened. So
it's one of these moments for me that, like, just the loss of life. I mean, any loss of life is horrible. But in something like this, that it's just so much and so many people injured, and it's just sad. It's just grief beyond belief, for those affected by this. And so, I know every news agency is reporting on this, and every little time, unfortunately, the body count goes up, it gets reported on, or every single time, more details come out, it gets leaked. And like you said, Steve, we want this podcast to be a fun podcast, and to talk about things we find entertaining and exciting, and to try to keep some positivity, because there's so much negativity out in the world. So we try to do our little piece to make things better. But I think we would be remiss if we didn't say that our thoughts and prayers go out to the families of those that were lost, and to those that were injured as well.
Yeah. I remember, this was some years ago, back when we lived in Aurora, Naperville area, and I was thinking about, there was something that had happened locally that was just not similar, but it was another tragic event where a husband took the life of his family, and I was thinking, I was kind of just really weighing heavily on my heart, And I was thinking about how, you feel hopeless sometimes at times like this, and what you can do to help, or what you can do to, help the situation, which, this is a country away, or states away, miles away. And I had this, and this kind of goes along with our podcast a little bit. I had this image in my mind of some, epic battle between, superheroes, or between, wizards in the Harry Potter world, or whatever, where you have these two people that are battling, and you have kind of the classic, kind of streams of power, right, coming out of wands, or coming, superheroes, where you've got the good and the bad, and you see this kind of the streams pushing back and forth, and it kind of came to my mind that the way that we can combat evil is just to be good, to do good, and I'm not going to fly out to Las Vegas. I'm not going to be able to help these people, but what I can do is I can do good and be good in my circle, and in the circle of influence that I have here in my own life. And I am far from perfect at that, but, I try every day to just exude goodness, and to try to be good, and to because that's really the way that we can combat things like this. We can't stop them because they're going to happen, but we can be as good as we possibly can, and help others, and be just good people. And the golden rule is simple, no matter what race, religion, creed you live by. I mean, that's fairly simple and fairly kind of
universal,
overarching, universal theme that I think we should all live by. So, God bless you out there, and be strong, keep the faith. So,
Steve, unfortunately, besides that, there's been some other loss. Tom Petty died yesterday.
Yep.
And, Tom Petty, I guess, had woken up, or had not woken up, and was found. He was in cardiac arrest and was unconscious, and they rushed him to the emergency room, and basically, there was some false reporting that he'd already died, when he'd actually only been taken off life support and still clung to life for quite a while, for a few hours.
He did.
And so there was some false reports that he passed, but unfortunately he did pass away yesterday. He was 66 years old. Tom Petty had a solo career, but also he played, with the Heartbreakers for most of his career. They just got done doing a big 50 night tour. And he was kind of basically saying, this might be the last one, we're starting to get older and doing this many shows in such a short period of time. But for me, man, I love Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I love the sound of that band. I mean, it's just some classic, to me, classic rhythm and blues, rock and roll, feel good music, music that never felt dark and depressing and heavy. Even though sometimes his music and the lyrics were
the themes, the themes, the content.
Yeah, exactly. The content and the theme was, but just stuff that makes you want to tap your foot, makes you want to sing along, pick up a guitar and strum along to the song. So I think most people are going to know him from that, obviously. But also, he was an actor. I mean, I don't know if you remember now. I'm not going to say he was necessarily a great actor. But I mean, he'd done some TV show appearances and things like the Gary Chandler Show, Made in Heaven, and Larry Sanders Show. And then, of course, he also had a role in the 1997 Kevin Costner film, The Postman, where he basically played that Bridge City kind of mayor guy who kind of looked like he was playing a future version of himself. This is kind of in the post-apocalyptic. I mean, he's done appearances in The Simpsons, voiced a character, I think, for King of the Hill for a while. He's just, done a bunch of different stuff, and he's kind of everywhere. I mean, he obviously has played, things like the Super Bowl before, big concerts and whatnot, but he did some, I think he did some, team ups early on in his career with, Stevie Nicks from, Stevie Nicks, but she was from Fleetwood Mac. Sorry, little mental hiccup there. But anyway, it's sad. It's sad to know that he's gone as well, and that his music is just now going to live on, in recorded vinyl and CD and MP3 and all that. But he'll no longer be with us making music.
Yeah, I think they were, the Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I believe, in 2002. And, that was actually shortly before I think there was, I don't know, his bassist Howie Epstein, I think, had some trouble with some drug addictions. But what I think is awesome, because as I was traveling today and just in different places, listening to the radio as well, they played a lot of Tom Petty, and I was just thinking, like, he's got a great voice. He's got this, like, it's rock, but it's also kind of like this folky kind of sound to it. And you think about some of the songs, like the first song that I ever learned to play on the guitar was Free Fallin', right? D-A-D-E, or whatever it was. But you think, like, I Won't Back Down, Mary Jane's Last Dance, Running Down a Dream, and so many others.
Free Fallin'.
Yeah, Free Fallin'. One of my favorites, though, and this is one that probably doesn't get a lot of play, is a song called Wildflowers. And I wanted to end this kind of tribute to Tom Petty by just saying that the first verse of that song, which says, "You belong among the wildflowers. You belong in a boat out to sea. Sail away, kill off the hours. You belong somewhere you feel free." So, Tom, thanks for all the music.
So let's kind of move past some of the memorials, and let's get to some of the stuff that's a little happier.
Let's do it.
Except I'm going to talk about the Punisher promo, which is like not a happy show at all. So if you've seen the second season of Daredevil, and I'm not going to give much away, but the Punisher does play a role, and he's getting his own series on Netflix. They've released, basically on Instagram, they released this little video of this promo for the Punisher, and there's really cool music in the background, but it's kind of like him just kind of like walking through, and like you can see behind him some of like the scenes of like death and loss and like heartbreak that this character's had. And what makes this show really exciting for me, Steve, is that the Punisher, as he's portrayed in the Marvel Netflix series on Daredevil season 2, is he's not a good guy. He's not a bad guy. He's just a guy that's set on getting justice, and he's not going to take any crap from anyone. He doesn't care about the consequences. So like his aims have a sense of morality to them in trying to do what's right and get justice, but at the same time, like, he's murdering people to get it. And
right.
he's not, not content to let the law and the justice system take things the appropriate way. And so he's, you can't like really root for him, but you can't really root against him. So it kind of like plays you emotionally on this fence. Like sometimes you're maybe leaning one way, sometimes you're maybe leaning another way. And I like that because it makes for an interesting character study. Yeah, no,
do you remember the movie The Punisher that they made some years ago?
I do, and I remember it wasn't that good.
It was right up there with Batteries Not Included and Cabin Boy.
No. It did have Rebecca Romaine Stamos at the time, and so I definitely think it's better than Cabin Boy and Batteries Not Included for that one small.
Now I'm gonna have to go and find out who the female lead was in Batteries Not Included. Oh, what about so and so?
Mary Steenburgen. I don't know. I'm making that up.
So speaking of some movies that have come and gone, we spoke. I guess it was, I don't know, a few weeks ago, I think, about just some nostalgia movies as we often do and relive our wild childhoods. One of the movies that has been kind of fit for a remake. I think this was actually one that I would like to see a remake done of it because I think technology has come so far. We were talking about E.T., of course. Yeah. Is the fantastic 80s movie Flight of the Navigator. Do you remember this movie?
Oh, of course.
Oh my gosh! Remember the spaceship? How skinnies out and it gets fantastic. Yeah. So it's a movie. Obviously, if you haven't seen it, it takes a young boy.
I think that movie introduced me to that song by the Beach Boys. Get around, I get around, get around, I get around. Yeah. I think that's how was introduced. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a great 80s movie. It revolves around a kid that gets kind of plucked from from his time in like 1978, turns up in 1986. He kind of has to figure his way out. His younger brother is now old, and he's got to figure out how to get back. So he uses the spaceship and the alien, or I guess his name is Max, who kind of operates the ship, or is the alien in the ship.
You mean Pee Wee Herman?
Is voiced by none other than Paul Rubens. That's right. This is before the flashing incident, though, I believe, when he still had a career. Anyway, so he has some what's cool though is in this film they do have interference from NASA, which is kind of like the adult types, or the spacemen, but like the protagonist in the
E.T. Talk about the government people.
The government people, yeah. Which I guess I'm crossing streams here, because last week, for those of you that may not know, Spencer and I were invited to join another podcast where we reviewed the classic movie E.T. for its 35th anniversary. So
yeah, and that was actually for the podcast That's Entertaining with our good friend Nathan.
Which was fantastic, great guy, and he was well versed in the movie. But again, I'm talking like it was this audience that heard that. So anyway, that was the reference. But this film is being remade. Disney is I think gotten together with there's a new Lionsgate version, I guess, coming out. It's going to be produced by the Henson company, obviously Jim Henson, and no doubt we'll have some puppet expertise that will be front and center in this Alien reboot that I am actually excited about. What do you think?
So my question to you is, you seem to know a lot about this reboot that's coming up. I just heard that it was kind of happening. Are you having some like inside knowledge? Do you know people that are in the industry that are working on this?
Yeah, Martha Stewart. She called me. A little insider trading.
Nice. Here's the thing. I'm okay with certain things being remade. I think this is one of the cases where I'd be okay with them remaking this movie, because if you were to watch this movie now, it would seem probably extremely dated. At the time, it probably felt current and whatnot. So I think this is a story you could retell and you'd be fine. Then there's other movies like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. They never need to remake that. That movie's perfect for like a sci-fi type of movie. But
I thought Footloose they never had to remake. Like,
Karate Kid, no, didn't need to be remade. But of course, we do get Billy or William Zabka and Ralph Macchio and Karate Kid Full House coming to YouTube. So
That's right.
So here's something, Steve, I've got that's really kind of exciting to me. So there's been rumors and news that's leaked out that in the upcoming Justice League film, which I've still heard some other rumors that make me really, really cautious for this movie. But this rumor I hope is true, that the Justice League is going to feature the original 1978 John Williams Superman theme inside of Justice League at some point. Maybe not the whole thing. Maybe it'll be altered a little bit, but kind of the traditional Superman theme. And that's my jam, man. That is my ringtone every morning. Every single morning I wake up to the Superman theme.
Really?
Yep, it's on my phone. That's my alarm. So I hear it every single morning. So I'm excited for this. I also heard that there's a chance that they may bring back Danny Elfman's Batman theme from the 1989 Batman film in there as well.
I'm all for that.
Like they may try to work that in somehow. I like that idea. Like it's kind of a nod to the classic interpretations of Superman and Batman that has been around for a long, long time that a lot of people are going to resonate with. I'm okay with that. I'm on board. So I hope I'm keeping my fingers crossed. We'll definitely talk about it after Justice League comes out, because if it's a hot pile of garbage dumpster fire, we're going to talk about it. But if it, surprises us like Wonder Woman did, listen to me. If it surprises us like Wonder Woman did, we're definitely going to talk about that too.
Yeah. So one thing I had, not a big thing, but there is no shortage of obviously fan made tributes to Stranger Things, and many others. I mean, Star Wars and all the rest. But this latest one came directly from Netflix. It's a kind of a faux trailer that is titled "Love in the Upside Down," and it's basically takes snippets from the first season and shows this basically kind of like this love story between Nancy and Steve, and Nancy and the buyer's boy, and it's just a kind of a funny little minute and a half trailer that it's just funny. You can take you take anything out of context, right? I think that's what we really learn from these things. Is like, you could take anything out of context, make a different movie, and then
right. Do you realize how close we are to season 2 of Stranger Things?
Oh my gosh, I feel like a man in prison. Like I have like these little chalk writings on the wall. Carrie's like, I'm gonna erase them. Like, don't you dare!
It's like, I'm getting released from this place soon.
Exactly. I'm busting this popsicle stand. No, I am totally stoked.
My friend Andy Dufresne. We go to San Juanejo.
Now, Spence, you will actually be in the motherland come October 30th, so you'll miss it by a day. So we won't be able to watch the first episode together because I think it actually drops on Halloween. Yeah, I know.
So going to be back for that weekend right before Halloween. Going to be spending time with the old Steve Madura family and going back home for the reunion. And I think we may go see Hamilton while we're in Chicago. We're kind of in negotiations to potentially go see that. But yeah, so we'll definitely just barely miss being able to watch Stranger Things together. But I would imagine that following week we'll probably talk about Stranger Things season 2.
I would say you are correct. You are correct. Now, in these negotiations, I will just remind you that you did just buy a video game system. I know, just saying.
There was $80.
Just so we keep things in perspective. I'm just saying. Hey,
you paid Carter that $4.80 you still owe him?
Oh, how convenient.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Maybe you should not throw shade my way right now. By the way, if you have not paid him that by the time I arrive, I'm going to pay him that and prove why I'm better than you. Just saying.
Then I will definitely not pay him by that. Please. This has backfired terribly in your detriment.
Dang it.
Okay. Cool. Anything else you want to share before we move on?
So one last thing. It's a quick thing. I saw this and it made me laugh. Quick thing is a little pun, by the way. Anyway, you'll see in a second. They're making a live-action Sonic the Hedgehog movie. And my question is, why?
Live action?
Yeah. Live action Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, here's the second question. You remember last week we talked about some weird cross promotions in Japan?
With Hooters.
So my question is Sonic the Hedgehog going to be like a fry cook at Hooters? And then like all of a sudden something happens and he's got like spin into a little ball and go spinning out the back door? I don't know why. I mean, it's one of these things where it's like, I get nostalgia, but I don't know that Sonic the Hedgehog was that beloved that at this point in 2017, I think the movie's like slated for like 2019, but I don't think that there's that much love for a live action Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
I mean, I just wonder, did they make this because Andy Serkis needs a job? Is that what they really did?
Right.
The actor who plays Smeagol, like, is this why?
I mean, I don't know. Anyway. So, that was a real quick thing on Sonic the Hedgehog, and, I'm not planning on seeing that. I don't know if it's actually going to end up happening, but, someone go see that and let us know about it.
Oh, that sounds so stupid.
Yeah, kind of.
Anyway, call it like I see it.
Anyway, that's all I got. You're out?
I'm out.
Okay. Listeners, friends, or as we say, super friends. Last week, we didn't ask you a question. We threw it open to you, and we said, hey, why don't you toss us your questions, and we'll answer them. So, Steve, we got some few questions, so you have to be on your toes here a little bit and
okay,
and see this. Now, I'm going to start with the first one with Peter Christensen. I'm going to go to email because this just made me laugh. It says, Dear Nerds, while there's no doubt that Katherine Johnson had the building named after her because of the success of a Hidden Figures movie, it wasn't delayed because of any malice. A lot of firsts don't seem monumentous at the time. Apple started in a garage and Bill Gates moved to Albuquerque to be closer to Altair, the first personal computer maker. I'm sure the civil rights had a lot of forgotten false starts before real progress was made. I'm not surprised at her reaction. I bet it's hard to get worked up about anything when you're 99. And then he said, a coworker got an SNES Classic from Amazon Treasure Truck. It's pretty slick and I think it would be too much fun, so I'm glad I don't have one. The pixels were hilariously huge on the giant conference room TV he was playing on. And he says, one last word of advice.
Pizza boxes.
One last word of advice for Spencer. If you want to be groped, please do not follow the golden rule. And he says, cheers, Peter. And I responded, I was like, no question? I mean, And so then he followed back up and he says, what booth or person at Comic-Con did you most want to see but didn't get to? For me, that's Nolan North. Nolan North is a voice actor. He's been in all sorts of things, video games, cartoons, some movies. But for me, he does the voice of Nathan Drake in the Uncharted series. And I really, really, really wanted to get a chance to go meet him. And I was hoping to get him to intro our podcast as Nathan Drake from the Uncharted series. And so we could have that. But I just kind of ran out of time and didn't have the ability to make that happen. And so I'm hoping, I think he's come once before, so I'm hoping, he will maybe come again in the future. And then of course, the big thing that I really missed was Patrick Rothfuss, who's one of my favorite authors, writes the King Killer Chronicles series. He was scheduled to be there, and I actually drove down Thursday night to meet him and go to his panel. And when I got there, I found out he wasn't there. And then I figured out the reason why, because he kind of had it on his blog. His dad is really, really sick with stage 4 cancer, and they're not giving his dad much time. So he decided to cancel his appearance that weekend to be with his dad. And as soon as I heard that, I lost my father about 15 years ago this December, and I know that I would trade almost anything to get a few extra moments with my father. So when I heard that, immediately, my heart went out to him, and I sent him a little message on Twitter, and I'm sure he got lots of them, and I'm sure he's too busy and doesn't have time to read them, but I at least wanted to express, my heartfelt condolences. I'm actually glad that he missed the con and he didn't show up, because he's where he needed to be, for his dad, and I have all the respect in the world for that. So hopefully down the road sometime I get a chance to meet him and get him to autograph my copies of his books. But at the moment, I'm okay. But I did get a chance to stop by the booth of his charity World Builders a few times. I got to get some merchandise, and I got a little mystery bag that had some swag in it and some pretty cool stuff. And I got I got a book, and I got a little tech coin, and just some other cool stuff. They're a great, great organization. So anyway, it's two people that I missed that I would have liked to have seen.
So I actually was looking at the attendee list because again I did not attend the Comic-Con.
What?
But I think we are talking about the Salt Lake Comic-Con specifically.
Yes.
And one person that I think I really would have loved to have met is and call me cheesy, but Richard Dean Anderson. I mean, who the freak doesn't want to meet MacGyver, right?
I saw him there.
Did you really?
He's got a lot of white hair now, but still.
Oh, I'm sure. And no mullet, I assume.
No mullet. Yeah, that would be crazy if he did.
A white mullet, that would be odd.
Yes.
anyway, so would love to meet MacGyver. It's kind of been a lifelong dream of mine. I mean, he's the human Swiss Army knife.
It's true.
And then also, who was not at this, he was at an earlier Comic-Con in Salt Lake back in the spring, so I'm going to still count it, would be Weird Al Yankovic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, from my childhood, I mean, he popularized many songs that I actually didn't know the original songs to, but only the spoofs. And anyway, but he's always been a bit of a comedic icon for me back in the day. So just to say hi to him and say, Mr. Yankovic, you move me.
In weird ways.
That's right. All right, good question, Peter.
Moving over to Facebook, Caleb Albers. So before I ask my questions, I have questions, by the way. I have a funny story from Comic-Con. Me and Koi, that's his brother, went this year to meet the voices of Goku and Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z in a photo op. And Koi and I shook both their hands and got the picture done without a hitch. And before we even left the photo booth, Koi turns to me and totally fangirls out, saying, "They touched my shoulder!" I turned around and both of them were laughing. It was super funny. I mean, maybe had he listened to the podcast beforehand and we talked about some of the things not to do, but you know what? I get it. I mean, I told you, I struggled super hard when I met Lou Ferrigno not to go all fangirl, fanboy and, just lose it. Which, by the way, Peter Christensen did call me out and say, "Hey, where's that picture of Lou Ferrigno?" So that was the image I used to ask this week to ask for questions. It was the picture of me and Lou.
Oh, that's awesome.
As I call the Incredible Hulk. Anyway, he says, back to my questions. What games did you two play as kids that you wish your kids could experience like you did? What show and movie would you want to experience for the first time again? And finally, if you could choose any celebrity to be a guest on the show, who would it be? So let's take the first one. Steve, what game did you play as a kid that you wish your kids could experience like you did?
I have to say Super Mario Brothers, the first one. I was one of the first kids on my block to get a Nintendo Entertainment Center, a NES, with a zapper and all. And I just remember that experience of going from what I think I had before was a Commodore 64 with games like Tapper and Moonraker and some others, or Moonwalker, to going to an actual real video game system. And just, I remember, I played the crap out of that game. I played it, that was, I think, the time when thumb blisters were
a big thing.
A big thing. Yeah. Back in the day. And just the experience of the newness of that really just kind of made a huge leap for me in video game kind of just quality and just graphics and levels and plots and themes and all the rest. So just that experience. The game is what it is, in comparison to many other games, but that experience of playing it for the first time, I think is huge. I'd love that for my kids.
So I'm also going to go with a NES game. But mine was Super Mario Brothers 3. And the reason why I wish my kids could have that same experience as I did, like you, Steve, I played the mess out of Super Mario Brothers, and then I played the mess out of Super Mario Brothers 2. And I remember we went to go see this little movie called The Wizard with Fred Savage, where I think we've talked about it, the mentally handicapped brother kind of leaves and kind of runs away, and they try to follow him. And he's trying to get to a video game competition in California.
Yes, that movie couldn't be made today. Yes,
right. But at the finale of that game, they're we're doing all the normal games the kids were playing at the time, and then they unveiled a new game for kids to play, and it was Super Mario Brothers 3. And I remember that when the screen opened and they showed that, my brother Josh and I started freaking out because we're oh, they're making a Super Mario Brothers 3. And then it was a couple months later when it actually came out, and I remember I came home and my mom said, "Hey, I bought you guys something, but I don't know if we're going to keep it because it was really expensive." It was $60 brand new at the time, which was a lot of money back then. And
which back in the late 80s was $1,000.
Right.
Carrying the inflation,
It was carry the one. It was
Yeah.
a lot. It was a lot of money, and I remember she said like, we can't play it until your dad gets home, and I need to talk to your dad because it's a lot of money. And I think she got it at Walmart, so she could still return it. And Dad came home and said, "Yeah, let the boys keep it." And so we got to open it up, and we ended up playing that game for like 8 hours straight. I mean, no bathroom breaks, no deviation, 8 hours straight. It was ridiculous. Because I think I think it was like a Saturday, and my dad came home for lunch or something. Like we played it until like we were forced to get off and go to bed. And that experience for me was probably one that like my kids can't repeat, because that was a moment in time where like we played like the original two versions, Super Mario Brothers, the original version on the NES, and then a sequel, and then to find out there was going to be a threequel, like that was just like mind blowing. Like now, if a video game does good business, there's going to be sequels and multiple sequels, and they're going to continue making these games until eventually no one wants them. But back then, you didn't know that. There was no internet. There was no way for a kid of about 10 years old to know that was going to happen. But to be surprised in a movie that you had no clue, man, that was big to me. Okay.
That's awesome.
So he says, what show and movie would you want to experience again for the first time?
Show or movie? Well, I've talked about it before, so I don't want to rehash it, but my experience with watching Sixth Sense for the first time was awesome, and it could not be recreated, I think. That was an awesome experience, just keeping the secret for 2 years while I was a missionary and wasn't able to watch movies until the moment when the big reveal at the end was awesome. I would say in the way of shows, though, to experience again, like I was big into The Simpsons, and I really enjoyed just the humor of The Simpsons, and I would look forward to it. And then, when they came in on DVD, I got all the seasons, and I guess binge watch before binge watching was a thing or a buzzword.
Right.
And I think a lot of a lot of the humor just resonated with me. Very similar humor to what I find funny. So, I guess that experience, that was kind of the first real series, comedy series sitcom that I was really into and loved, and still to this day. I mean, I could throw an episode in and still be entertained and laugh.
For me, the movie is going to be Empire Strikes Back. If I could go back in time and re-experience that again for the first time, and the big reveal in the third act of the film that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father, that would be a moment I wish I could go back and redo again. That was awesome. TV show, it's super easy for me. Lost. If I could go back in time and re-experience that show for the first time, I mean, that was a show that everyone would get around the water cooler and talk about. I mean, everyone in America was talking about the thing, and there's all these little clues and hints and mysteries, and what does this mean? And, who are the others, and why are they living here, and what's going on in the bunker, and Ben Linus, and the island, and
everybody had their own, theories as to what was happening. And
the hatch and the bunker, and 108 minutes, and the lotto numbers, and all this stuff that, just so many cool things to talk about, and everyone had all these theories. That's one you can't go back and re-experience that again for the first time. But if I could, that would be one. Okay, the last of his questions. Any celebrity to be a guest on this show, which celebrity would it be, Steve?
I would say, this is not so I don't know. One of the actors that I really have always looked up to, always appreciated anything that they're in. As a pure actor, I would love to have, and I just think he would be really interesting to interview and to talk about his life experiences, because, he is a knight after all. So I would say Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Okay.
I know he's not big into, kind of the nerd and pop, but he is one of the actors that I truly respect, and everything from Shadowlands to Silence of the Lambs. He freaking does it all, and 127%.
So I have a lot of different actors that I would say these would be if I could choose any celebrity, Mark Hamill would be awesome to have on the show. That would just be a dream get. William Shatner. But I'll tell you someone who there's just lots and lots of people. But I tell you someone who like right now is really current that I would love to have on the show. I would love to get Chris Pratt on the show. Like that would, like, I just think like his sense of humor and his personality, like, I think we would be able to have a really awesome conversation with him and just laugh a ton. And, he's played some of my favorite characters. I mean, Andy Dwyer on Parks and Rec. And then of course, he's Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy. Just everything that he does, I've enjoyed. So Chris Pratt would be a huge get for me.
I think another one that I think would be a lot of fun, and this is more just kind of a throwback from our childhood, not necessarily current, no offense. I think it'd be really fun to interview Adam Sandler.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that would be one for me that would be kind of like a childhood dream, or maybe a teenage dream of like, I just remember listening to his album, what the heck happened to me, and some of those just like, it was like listening to Bill Cosby back in the day when he was funny, right. on records or something. So,
okay, moving over to Twitter, we got Skinny Matt at Skinny Matt K. He says, "Why would an event sell me a ticket for the whole seat if I will only need the edge?"
Can you pro rata that? You'd be like, I only got one cheek on, really. So
what is the cost for a single cheek, and maybe just a hint, a light brushing of the other cheek?
They're like, I'm going to call security if you don't step away from the counter, sir.
I mean, that's a really funny question.
Well, and per his handle, Skinny Matt probably only uses half a chair anyway. So
here's the thing. They're going to sell you the whole dang seat because they want to charge you the whole dang price.
That's funny.
But I do like that question. That's pretty funny.
That's a good question.
Grouchy Surge at backlog_blues says, Spencer, how often do you shave your head? Now, if you know me or you've seen my profile picture on Twitter, which is at StreetTeamMTTG, you can see a picture of me on Twitter. I embraced the bald, beautiful look because my hair started going when I was about 16, and it rapidly sped up in my early 20s, and by my late 20s, I mean, the thoroughfare was pretty empty of cars, we'll say. So I typically shave my head about once a week. I'll do it on the weekends, like Saturday or Sunday, because I don't really start getting that 5 o'clock shadow until Monday-ish, maybe going into Tuesday.
Around 5 o'clock.
Now, if I'm doing a bunch of different events, I may shave a little more often, like 2-3 times a week, but I try not to do it so much because razors are expensive. Steve, you're not shaving your head yet. I've tried to convince you to shave your head for many years. What is it going to take for me to convince you to shave your head?
You can buy me a year's supply of razors.
How about I just buy you one, we shave you, and then if you like it, then I'll buy you that year's supply of razors.
See, here's
with
the
Dollar
thing.
Shave Club, of course.
Yeah, right, exactly. Here's the thing, though. I don't. Unfortunately, I was not blessed with the shape of head, I believe, that is going to play well with that. Some people you're like, yeah, that guy, yeah, Vin Diesel, yeah, Spencer Stapleton, that guy should be bald. He looks good bald. He rocks it. And not so much. You get a skinny guy that's bald. That's it's not gonna.
Here's the thing, though. You don't know until you actually shave it.
That's what you said about meth, and look where it got me.
You run the largest meth empire in the Midwest. You're sitting on billions of dollars. You're rolling fat stacks of cash. You're awesome.
So it will take me probably a few more years and a few more teenagers to get me to.
I'm gonna laugh when you lose the rest of your hair, and you're bald anyway, and then you do shave it down, you're like, oh, hey, this actually doesn't look bad. I should have listened to Spencer years ago.
My justification is always like, I gotta bulk up a little bit more. To really rock the ball, I gotta bulk up a little bit more. And I haven't been motivated enough to get to the gym, so yeah. It's chicken and egg. It's chicken and egg.
Okay, we got two more. We'll try to get through this a little quickly. Paul Calico at pcalico84, which of course we know Paul. He's going back and listening to the backlog, and he says, "Okay,
what's up, Paul?"
He says, "I've run into a little snag with episode number 5."
Oh no, what was that?
Worst movie recommendation says, "I asked my wife, and she said that's hard one because you recommend good movies. So apparently, Steve, not everyone recommends bad movies like you and I do."
So he has no bad movies he's ever recommended? I don't believe it.
That's what he's claiming, or at least that's what his wife is claiming, which could just mean she's a kind wife who doesn't want to throw her husband under the bus.
Not included. Yeah, yes. Maybe she just has a low brow of what's good and what's not. Who knows? A lot of variables at play.
Okay, our last one, going back to the emails one last time. It says, "Mates, greeting from down under. I have moved and started a new chapter in my life. So, good day, mate. Let's put another shrimp on the barbie. When you go to a new place, what are you most excited to experience? New food, new culture, etc. May your toilets always flush the right way. Azoj Nodal Pats."
Well, Ajos Nodal Pats, mate. I would say that I really do enjoy, if this is a sincere question, not just some kind of faux question from some made-up character, I really do enjoy the food. So even if it's a domestic travel, I always try to embrace whatever that culture or that area of the country or, of course, world's food is. And so even today, we sought out, my colleague and I, a Philly cheesesteak place. We went to this place called Connie's out in Scranton and partook. And I had it loaded with, more provolone than probably is advisable for someone who's lactose intolerant, and bell peppers and sautéed onions and mushrooms and all the rest. I had it loaded, and it was good. So I always try to partake of a little bit of the local fare. I don't know. What about you?
So for me, my it's not food for me. I mean, there's some stuff I'll want to try, but I don't like spicy food. And so a lot of times you're like, oh, you got to try this. It's this great Indian, or it's this great Mexican, or it's this great blah, whatever. And it's always like people only get me to eat spicy food. So for me, traveling, it's not about food. But for me, it's more of seeing things that I can only see in that one place. So for instance, if I were going to travel to the British Isles, the ability to go to Stonehenge, I would want to do, because that's the only place I can go and see that. If I'm in Ireland, I want to kiss the Blarney Stone, because it's the only place I can see that, or I can do that. And so for me, it's more of trying to experience something that's authentic and unique to that location that you can't do anywhere else. I remember, we went to, when we went to visit my mom, who's back in Pennsylvania, we went to this little Amish, I don't know, the little Amish city, this kind of village or community. And we went there and we got to see all this kind of cool stuff from, this culture. I can't see that a lot of places. That's definitely not anywhere around here. It's not necessarily things that interest me a ton. It's a lot of quilts and a lot of homemade furniture and toys and stuff like that. But I can really appreciate the craftsmanship and the work that goes into those sorts of things. And it's I enjoyed that experience. Plus, they do have some actually pretty good food. But I do like to go see things, experience things. So
yeah, you never want to get those things mixed up though. You go to the Amish and you kiss an Amish and you ask for a Philly cheesesteak. You're you've got your TripAdvisor a little mixed up, I believe.
Right. We don't run with the bulls here. This is London.
Exactly. We raise barns.
Right. So anyway.
Very cool.
Thank you so much, Super Friends, for your questions this week. We love answering your questions. We're going to continue to ask questions, and we're going to continue to ask questions from you. You can follow us on Twitter, which is @FortofNerd, or reach us by email, fortofnerd@gmail.com, or Facebook, which is facebook.com/ Fort of Nerd. Steve, our friends, our super friends are out there. They're working. They're getting us new super friends. But how can they currently help us? Is there a way they can subscribe, or is there something they can do?
There is. They can rate us on iTunes, so the Fortress of Nerditude isn't as hard to find as I got nothing, seriously.
Maybe as a Super Nintendo Mini Classic that you have to stand out the cold for. Maybe as a hat to cover Steve's bald spot. Maybe as I'm just saying, there's lots of things that it could be.
Jerk.
Okay, so what's the benefit then of our super friends subscribing to the podcast?
Well, there is very complex algorithms that will put us to the top of the search engine optimization within iTunes, so that we will be easier to find, faster to search. We'll go into more homes, to more devices, to earbuds and Beats by Dre around this beautiful globe of ours, and get into the minds and hearts of people everywhere.
And it gets you the podcast first thing on Thursday mornings. It's just waiting for you as you wake up.
And you don't have to stand in line.
Right?
You don't have to use Target's cartwheel crap. Or is it pinwheel?
Cartwheel, you had it. Pinwheel.
Gosh.
Nice. So Steve, you sent me an article from, I think it was The Atlantic, which I don't typically frequent. But you sent me an article about kind of the idea of like, is smartphones ruining a generation? Something along those lines, right? Can you run me down a little bit?
Yeah.
It's been a day or two since I've read that.
Yeah, so this is an article that actually became fairly popular, call it a month or so ago. The title is "Have Smartphones Destroyed a Generation?" And you're right, it's from The Atlantic. And I thought that, we often, as we talked about earlier in the podcast, try to keep things light, and that's was kind of the theme and the intention that we wanted to go out of the gate before we started doing this podcast. But that's not to say that we don't want to talk about things that are important and things that can, can be maybe a little bit more of a serious note. And so this article came through. My wife asked that I read it, and I've read it. I sent it to Spencer. But the basic idea, the basic premise is that they've done some studies, and they came up with kind of this stark realization that this generation, when I talk about this generation, they classify in the article this generation as being the iGen. So you've got the millennials that were just before, you've got Generation X before that, you've got baby boomers before that. So this generation is the iGen generation, which is basically those born between 1995 and 2012. And the article goes into basically the effects that smartphones and iPads and things of that nature are having on this generation. And I thought it was a really interesting read, as one who has children and as one who is dealing at this very moment with this question of how young is too young, how soon is too soon to give your children and to expose them to devices of really any kind. So that's kind of the premise.
What's your dilemma right now? Like, what kind of device are you looking to introduce to your children?
Yeah, so no, it's interesting. So a few weeks ago, my son has a friend, and he's an only child, so he gets kind of a lot of things, we'll say, and he's not spoiled by any means, but he just has a lot of things, and it's fine. And he was getting a new phone, and he always is wanting to, he's always like, Carter, you need a phone. And so he actually gave my son, with the permission of his mom, his old iPhone. Now I had to burst Carter's bubble to say, now you understand, son, the variable of cell phone coverage and of monthly payments, and kind of brought him into the stark and cold reality of what it really means to have a phone that quote unquote works. But anyway, so he was given this iPhone.
You don't even have that. You don't even have a cell phone that works half the time.
I have a pay by month plan that no.
Yeah,
and so
for your meth empire, you've got a burner. That's what you're saying.
I go through a phone a week. And so he has this iPhone. It does totally work. He's got charger and everything like that for it, and it will work obviously on Wi-Fi to text and to do whatever.
Sure.
The challenge that we're facing now is obviously, we're probably not to the point now, and surely after reading this article, but that we would want to hook it up just yet to an actual plan where he would have, capabilities to call and access the internet at all times and in all places. But even without that, he has the ability to text, to access the internet via our Wi-Fi if we allow him, the access code and all the rest. And there are a bunch of games on it as well. So even with its limited use and limited functionality, we're already dealing with, him being on it more than we'd like, and him, texting his friends and doing things like that. And so it's kind of this dilemma that we weren't necessarily prepared for just yet, but has come to our borders, and we have to deal with it. So
okay.
So that's kind of where we are now.
So let me ask you this. I read this article too. So I kind of understand, the point this article I think makes is that, looking back at, I think, surveys and information, there's been a dramatic increase in what they said, a dramatic increase in the safety of kids that are, in this kind of what they call the iGen generation, right? Because they're spending more time at home. They're not going outside in public as much. They're not doing as dangerous of things. They were talking about how kids used to go to the roller skating rinks in the late 70s so they could smoke and drink and hang out with their friends,
make out in the back of cars.
Yeah, and do things that they weren't supposed to do. Our generation, Gen X, we looked forward to getting our license so we could go out and drive and go out and hang out with our friends. I remember exactly when you got your license and you started driving, you got it and you immediately came over and picked me up, and
right.
And we went out and it was our parents would say, they say, well, you need to be, what time are you going to be home? And it was what time do I need to be home?
That's right.
Right. And
that's right. How far can I push the envelope?
Right. And they're saying that the generation now doesn't feel like that. Kids go to the mall, but they just go with their parents and they just kind of hang back and they just keep texting and, they're on their phone and they kind of, touch base pretty frequently. So kids are safer in a lot of respects, but they're saying the mental health issues that are arising are dramatically spiking for children now. Obviously they talked about some suicide statistics and statistics of kids with depression and all these other things. And I started thinking about that and I was well, I guess that makes sense if you're living your life by I need validation from my friends, but the only way I get validation from my friends is on social media. How many likes do I have? How many, YouTube hits? How many thumbs ups do I get? How many views on my Instagram or my Snapchat? And if that's how you're evaluating your self-worth is through the eyes of other people on social media, I could see how a lot of kids would maybe not think as much of themselves, right? And when you and I were kids, we didn't have this because and I've said this before, we had an analog childhood and a digital adulthood. The internet started becoming a thing in households when we were, middle way through kind of high school.
Yep.
And by time we were in college, cell phones were just starting to become a little more prevalent for average citizens to have. Before it was
the iPhone launched, I think, in 2007.
Right. And but that's the first kind of around the first age of the first smartphone. But I remember having a Motorola flip phone in 2001, and that was the first cell phone that I had. So
yeah.
we had a different experience, right? We went outside, we did stupid stuff, we got hurt more, but at the same time, I don't want to say it toughened us, but I want to say that it gave us a lot different experiences. It gave us a childhood where we're not afraid to try new things and go outside and do stuff and interact with people. I noticed that because I work with scouts, these boys that are between the ages of 12 and 14. It's almost easier for them to interact with other people and have a conversation with other people when they're looking at a device, which is kind of funny because it's you're not really having a true face-to-face conversation with someone. You're sitting in the same room and you're texting them. That's a different thing entirely.
Well, and the article goes into talking about how childhood is actually is now stretching beyond where it normally did by years. We're talking that childhood is now stretching into high school because these children are not taking responsibility. Not because it's not theirs for the taking, it's that they don't want it. It's the example with licenses is that, usually it was, I don't know what the statistic was, but it was like by, the start of the junior year of high school, 87, 89% of kids had their license. And this was back like in, 01 or something like that. And now the statistic is that 1 in 4 teens lack a driver's license even by the end of high school.
Wow.
And I know even my sister, she was like, yeah, well, mom drives me around everywhere. Why would I need a license? I don't even need one. I'm like, need one? It's called independence. It's called go where you want to go, do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's going into other things. I mean, that's going into managing money, just like you said, even going outside. I mean, I as well work with young people and to see, those that can't even interact or have a conversation and look you in the eye is dramatic. I mean, I would say it is far greater the exception than the rule of young people between the ages of 12 and 14, 15, 16 that I feel like, yeah, they can have a meaningful conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
A meaningful conversation. Some of the other statistics that this talked about, with regard to like independence, it said that 12th graders, so seniors in high school in 2015, were going out significantly less than 8th graders in 2009.
Wow.
And they start the article by interviewing this girl who they changed her name, but I think she summed it up really well. That said, we like phones more than we like people.
Yeah. How weird is that, right? So here's my question, right? So you're thinking about this as, kind of the idea of like, how young is too young? Like obviously Carter now has an iPhone, an older iPhone, right? And it's only connected to the Wi-Fi. But like,
right.
What was you and Carrie's, like, what was your kind of like target goal of like the age they would get introduced to a cell phone and have their own phone?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I would say that it probably is going to be, yes, between the ages of 12 and 14. I think our desire, which may or may not be right, is to hold out as long as possible. Because again, just the ill effects of and the blowback that I think we don't even know now of the effects of what it's going to have, are tremendous. And that goes beyond just the, I worry about him getting on the internet and seeing things that he shouldn't. I worry about him, communicating with somebody that would do him harm or that would have ill intentions. I mean, aside from those things, just the general time spent there, just the general interactions with other human beings, those things that I would love to prolong as long as possible.
So you're saying you are worried that he's going to try to download a picture of Kathy Ireland from the internet at extremely slow speeds?
Keep on the Wi-Fi, son. But at the same time, yeah, it's extremely helpful to be able to text and be able to say, hey, Dad, I'm done here, I'm done there, I can be picked up or whatever. But I just don't feel like right now that outweighs, the cons in my mind. Convenience, I mean, I usually know where he's at, what he's doing, when he needs to be picked up or whatnot. And he's not so entrenched or involved in one particular activity that he, needs to, I don't know, be that communicative as to goings and comings, because we're usually there and involved enough that, we know already.
Right.
So I don't know. So it's this kind of conundrum. Now it's inevitable. Obviously he is going to have that and experience that. You do have the blowback, at least from his point of view, that yeah, he may be probably one of the only kids his age, or at least his perception is that he's one of the only kids in his age that doesn't have a phone. But I don't see that as necessarily a bad thing.
Remind me, Carter's 12 again, right? Or 11?
He is 11. He's going to be 12 next year, or the next year.
So here's the thing, like, I've had conversations with Brita over the years, like, at what point do we want to let our boys have cell phones? Because, I mean, obviously Charlie's, just getting ready to turn 5, and Jackson's like 3.5. We've got some time. I started thinking, like, looking back to my childhood, right? My mom and dad knew where I was. Like, they'd let us go run out and play, and we'd say, hey, we're going over to Steve's house, or going over to Andy's house. We're going to be in the neighborhood. We're going to be over at West School. And like, my dad could like yell out the front door and we could hear his voice. And so we could come back, The street lights came on, you knew it was time to go home.
Right.
So I was thinking, like, okay, at what age? And, you start getting into high school, and, like, let's be honest, we did not have cell phones in high school. So when we would leave the house, we'd tell our parents where we're going to go. If there was a problem or emergency, we'd get to a landline at someone's house, or we'd get to a pay phone, or go into a business that had a landline, and we'd make a phone call. Which is funny because, like, you don't ask people to borrow their phones hardly ever anymore to make calls. And if you ask someone to borrow their cell phone, people are going to be weird. Like, he could just run off with my phone. Whereas, like, if you went into a business in our childhood and you said, excuse me, mister, can I use your phone to call my mom? Like, the guy behind the counter is not worried you're going to, run out the store with this phone because it's attached to the wall.
Yeah.
But we've had this conversation, and, like, I started thinking, like I said, back in my childhood, like, I wouldn't know that I would have really needed one until I was driving, and I had the ability to really go
somewhere.
off, go somewhere, and disappear, and be off on my own. And so, like, I kind of look and say, man, I would like to say that I could hold out until the boys are, like, at least 16, and then get them a cell phone, because at that point, it's like they see their friends in school. If they want to communicate, like, there's through Skype and instant messaging and whatnot, like, they could communicate with their friends through the computer, and that wouldn't be a problem. But I also get, like, I talked with my brother, Josh, and, like, they got Drew this phone, but it's kind of like a Dick Tracy wristwatch, because, like, he wears it on his wrist, but he can only call, like, maybe 4 numbers, and, like, you program them in. It's like mom's cell phone, dad's cell phone, and, like, grandma's cell phone, and then, like, 911. And, like, the only numbers I think he can call or something like that.
And do they pay a normal service for that?
I don't.
Is it just another line?
I don't remember what the details are on it, to be perfectly honest. But they probably just paid, like, the phone fee because it doesn't have data or internet or anything like that. But I mean, he's a little younger than Carter, and he's got that, so, like, he could message them and let him know when he's home or whatnot. But I know this is something I think every parent thinks about, right? Like, at what point
Absolutely.
do you introduce your kids to cell phones or get them tablets or whatnot? And while I think most parents are definitely caring, loving parents who want to do what's best for their kids, I think it's really easy to, like, here, take this digital device and, use this. It's kind of like the babysitter, like the old VHS tape, right?
Exactly. Pop this in and just be entertained for a while.
Right. Watch the Lion King.
I think it's easy to break.
Watch the Lion King for 90 minutes. Let mommy, get some dishes done without being interrupted every 3 seconds or whatever. But I do think that we really, as parents, have to be careful with that. I mean, we're adults. We understand, like, here's places you don't want to go on the internet. Here's words you don't want to search for in Google because you're going to get the wrong results no matter what. And kids don't know that innately. It's like they've got to be taught and they've got to learn. And if you open them up to all the information that's available out there, which there's a lot of good along with a lot of bad, you lose an ability to kind of control media consumption and control information. And I think there's always the risk that you run of, your kids learning about things that are going to be adult conversations that you need to have with them at some point, but they're not really ready for. And now they've got too much information that they're curious, and you really, it's going to make things hard.
Well, and it's not going to be the right information or presented in the right way. It's,
right.
So it's almost like, we're so protective over alcohol. We would never give an 11-year-old alcohol. We'd never give an 11-year-old cigarettes, right?
Sure.
But it's funny because the same, and this is not this article, but another article that I read about dopamine and how, this releases in the brain when you partake in certain, drugs and alcohol and whatnot. And the same chemical is released, when you're checking your phone, and when you're getting that, you get kind of almost like a hit. And that cell phones and things like that can be as addictive in some ways. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to make light or trite of anyone with substance abuse issues, but they can have that same addictive, qualities and tendencies. And for someone so young, and I think you and I think we were fairly good kids but we still got into trouble. We were fairly good
Yeah,
kids, but
for
like,
sure.
I still look for stuff that I shouldn't have, and to give a child so young, because really 11-year-old, they're still a child, something that you're right, has access to the internet at any given time, I just think is too young. We have all of our computers in open spaces, and it's not because we don't trust them, but it's just, you're right, there's so many things out there, and it is so easy to get to it. So
here's this question then. If you think
Sure.
11's too young, but he has this iPhone, are you going to continue to let him have the iPhone, or are you going to have to put restrictions on it, or are you going to sit him down and say, your mom and I have talked about it. We don't feel it's not that you're not ready, but we don't feel that it's the appropriate time to have this. And are you going to take that from him and return the phone to the family that gave it to him and say, thank you, but we're not at a place we're ready for him to have a cell phone yet. I mean, where are you at on that?
We're still talking about it. I think where we are right now is that we're still monitoring it. I think it's important to teach kids correct principles and let them, at some point govern themselves. I mean, so it ultimately, he's going to go out on his own. He's going to get a cell phone at some time. He's going to have to be able to govern himself. He's going to have to make right decisions when I'm not looking over him, or his mom isn't there. So I think where I am right now is that I may stay kind of a steady course where, he can have the phone. It will not be connected to a plan, so he'll not be calling. And he only uses it during certain times, certain times of day.
Sure.
Shirley would not have it in his room. Shirley would not have it in his room overnight. All of our devices are charged at a central location that is not in people's rooms, because I think that's just dangerous, just asking for trouble. So I think that's where we are right now, but that may change. And again, it may change from kind of time and season to time and season. If he shows us that, he can control himself and not overuse it, even just from a time suck perspective, then I think I'd be more open to doing that. But for instance, and this is just kind of a side note, kind of a funny thing, I was sitting having breakfast, last week sometime, and he gets a text, and I hear him kind of giggling and kind of talking to his brother. And I said, hey, what is that? He's like, oh, I got a text from AJ. And I could tell that he was kind of being a little didn't want to talk anymore about it. I'm like, what'd it say? And he's like, oh, it was just this image. I told him I couldn't come over and because I had to go to swim practice. And he sent me a funny GIF. He actually said GIF.
Thank you.
And,
thank you.
and I'm like, what is it? And so he finally shows it to me, and it's this image that says D's nuts. And I'm just like, really? I'm like, I had to kind of laugh a little bit inside, but at the same time, I'm like,
Right.
There's just like stuff like that. Like,
you're like, hey man, we were using that same line in 1995.
I know. I wanted to say it's actually kind of funny, but no, but I didn't. I held my peace. But it's that kind of thing that, like, kids can go back and forth, and one thing leads to another, and suddenly they're, it can go down a slippery slope fairly quickly.
Sure. Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think it's something that all parents think about, and we live in a digital world right now. I mean,
there's no going back.
Yeah, the technology revolution has just been so strong and prevalent the last, decade, the last 15, 20 years even. I think it's something that bears, like, consideration and thought by every parent, and anyone that's got younger ones in their care. I think we should ask our super friends what they think. Like, at what age do you think it's okay for a child to get a cell phone? Because I'm curious, because I know, like, kind of where I stand, and I know where, a few people stand, but like, there could be a wide range of, like, hey, we want to know where our kid's at, and they're out and about at 9 years old, or, I don't want them to have a cell phone till they're 35.
That's right. Well, and it's the same type of thing that I think, we have to obviously set boundaries. We have to keep our kids from falling into harmful habits. But there's also just a thing of, like, I want you to have a childhood. Like, I want you to experience, get outside. Remember, like, our parents would be like, get outside, get some fresh air. I think that there's something to be said, and it's probably, some X and Y axis. There's definitely a causal relationship of depression and not feeling good and feeling lonely and suicidal, all these things. You have to have interactions. We have to have personal human interactions. That's what this life is about. It's about interacting with one another, and that's what they're going to have to do for the rest of their life. So they got to start now. I think that there's a narcissistic generation that we are raising with, everything from selfies to taking pictures of your food and everything that you're doing, of every moment of every waking day. There's a faux rose-colored glasses where everybody lives this life on the internet of the best of themselves.
You're saying you want me to stop sending you photos every day of what I eat?
Absolutely. Lucky Charms every day. My gosh, try some oatmeal, my friend. But anyway, and that's a larger conversation, but I just think that we need to be careful with our media consumption, even as adults.
Yeah.
And while it has much good, I think there are definitely pitfalls that probably are not even understood by us that we will learn years later, just like we did with cigarettes. Oh, they're bad for you? They cause lung cancer? Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle.
Wow. I haven't heard the monkey's uncle line in quite a while.
Yeah,
so
pulled that one out.
Anyway, let's do that. Super Friends, let us know at what age do you think it's appropriate or okay for your little ones to have cell phones, and how do you approach the governing and the stewardship of said devices? You can let us know on Twitter, which is at Fort of Nerd, or the old long form answer, which is the email at fortofnerd@gmail.com, or Facebook, which is facebook.com/fortofnerd, and let us know, because we'd be curious to hear what you have to say on this. Once again, Steve, it's been great to be here with you talking. It's been great to do this again, and I'm glad we were able to take a little bit of time and make this happen.
Absolutely. Well, friends, be good out there. Be good to one another, because we need it.
Take care of yourself and each other.
May the force be with you always.